How are you?
Yeah, good. How are you?
I'm awesome. What a great conversation that was.
Oh, thank you.
And I know you couldn't hear me, but I'm sitting here going, yeah, yeah.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Wendy, I love you. I'm so glad that you took a time out of your busy schedule to come and join
I'm
us.
so happy to be here. I can't believe, first of all, how long it's been since I've seen you, and fuck you for not aging.
Oh, please, please. You know, you're not here in person. You know, we'll do that sooner or later, and you'll take all that back. And, you know, I was telling Riccardo, Wendy, that my hair is actually growing back. Can you see?
No, I can't. But that's so cool.
That was your cue to say yes.
Yes, I meant yes.
Outstanding. Outstanding.
Hi,
Wendy.
guys.
So how do you know Ron?
Wow, how do I know Ron? I remember Ron when he was the head of sales at Priority Records. Of course, he was 5 years old back then because, you know, he's barely 30 now. But I think that's where I first knew of him. And then I think we have a friend in common. I think it was Ronadeb. I call him Jello. I think that's how I met Ron. But when I met Ron, he was, can I swear? Is it okay for me to like swear like the seller that I am? Okay, great. Yeah. I thought he was the coolest motherfucker I had ever met. And I remember going to a restaurant with him. We were somewhere out of state. And we went to a steakhouse somewhere. And I think it was like on the side of a golf course somewhere.
Florida,
where was it?
Florida?
I can't remember. But I do remember that we talked about I have a license to carry. You have a license to carry. We had a really heavy conversation about weaponry, guns, and I had like hearts in my eyes at that point. And then we started talking about Master P, who I had worked with in the past and you had worked with in the past. And we had very different viewpoints of him, not opposing, but just different viewpoints. And when you put them together, they made like one complete person. And it was just really cool. And then we got closer. I think when you were at Asylum, we got closer. And I remember, I think that's when you pulled all your hair out. I remember learning so much from you about the major label system. And I don't want to speak for you or put any of your feelings out there, but I learned how much fuckery there is in the music industry. Like in general, I've learned that my whole career, but I didn't think it happened within labels with the politics of employees. And by seeing what you went through, and you went through it with grace, and you probably didn't notice, but you were like bombs were dropping around you constantly. And it never crossed my mind that you had to fight the outside world, and then you also had to fight the inside world at a major label. And it was such an eye-opening experience for me. Not that I would ever work for a major label, I wouldn't, but it shocked me the degree of fuckery that exists inside of a label.
Well, the reason that Ron probably didn't notice is because when you're Don Corleone, you don't notice what the capos are doing. You know, you're just riding the gravy train at the top.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's interesting because, by the way, I love Windy Day. So I'm very upset though with you that we haven't actually got together in person in a very long time. Now seeing you here,
it has been too long. I'm embarrassed.
And I'm going to blame you. You're 100% responsible for that.
I'll take responsibility. But you know what's really cool is that it doesn't feel long at all. Ron, I feel like we just spoke last week. Okay, we did speak last week. But I feel like it's been weeks as opposed to years since I spoke to you. Like, I feel like we just picked up where we left off and here we are.
Well, you know what?
That's really cool.
Isn't that wonderful? And
it's a blessing.
So happy and proud of all that you've accomplished. And I want to get into that a little bit, Wendy, because you've done so much for independent music community and independent.
And I still love it.
And the independent, I don't know what the political term is anymore. You know, I've always struggled with politics, but rap, hip hop, urban, you know, black music,
whatever you want to call it, that stuff.
I know that we share that passion for a long, long, long time. And you've dedicated your entire life, really, since I've known you, to assist.
28 years.
That's a long time.
It is a very long time.
Longer than a lot of the new and up and coming artists have been alive. So,
true.
You know,
shit, it's half my life, literally.
Well, yeah. but you know, it's a high calling. You know, it's a high calling because you know, now looking across the climate, which is not new to, I don't think, to anyone. Maybe it's just more vocal, you know, and maybe more people have a platform to vocalize it, and maybe more people are paying attention or not. I don't know. I know this, it ain't new. And I know that we've been in it for a really long time, and we've been trying to figure out how to get the message out there in a better way, in a different way, and let people express themselves. And this is a lot of what they were talking about for decades, about all kinds of exploitation, be it authoritative figures or other people or whatever, record labels or all those things, right? So now we have the opportunity to spend a moment in time talking to you about what do we do about that? How do we help more? What can people like Riccardo and I do about it, and people that are watching, you know, what can they do about it? Because music, I'll leave it with this. Music is, you know, is food for the soul. I didn't write that. I don't remember who did, but I thought it was beautiful.
And true.
So, you know, I mean, you start to weave this soundtrack of your life as you look back and you hear a song and it brings you to a place that
brings you right there. It's called anchoring.
And as gorgeous as that is now, right? It's like we've been able to touch and impact people, and you much more than me. And quite frankly, I want to just make sure that we do the right thing and help in this time that we're in, which again is not new.
Right.
This is not a new climate.
No.
So, you know, I mean, I'm a little astounded sometimes when you look at it, Wendy, that it's not new.
No.
Like everybody's like, oh, well, this happens. It's like, yeah, okay. Not that I just, you know, not that I belittle it or make it unimportant, but it's like, okay, this has been going on.
Right.
I've seen this a million times.
Right. You know, I had thought that the internet would sort of make a lot of things better. And of course it has in many, many ways. And I would never give it up because I love it. But it hasn't had the positive growth and impact that I thought that it would. For example,
what do you mean by that?
I'm going to give you two examples, actually. One is I thought that because artists would have access to so much information that a lot of the fuck shit that happens in the music business would no longer be possible, because you could go online, you could hear other people's stories, you could do some research and find out what's good and bad in a contract, you could hear podcasts and read books and find any kind of information that you needed in order to learn how the music business should operate and how to become successful in it. And I thought that proliferation of information would change artists' lives for the better, and it hasn't. It's actually gotten a little worse. I feel like people are a little bit lazier than they were in previous generations, where you couldn't just, you know, go into google.com and find out, you know, what is a good record deal? What is a bad record deal? I just feel like we haven't grown as much as we should have with the amount of information that's out there. And that's a little surprising to me. Yeah. And then the second area where it surprised me is I thought that hip hop would kill racism. I thought that once the world heard about the struggles of young African-American people, that they would become more sensitive and more enlightened about the Black experience. And I thought that with the internet going worldwide, that more people would get more comfortable and more at peace with people that didn't look like themselves. And that hasn't happened either. And I'm a little shocked by both of those things, because I really thought it would change the world.
Yeah, well, I mean, on that, actually, it's interesting you say that, because I also thought that would happen. You know, I was working in sports retail back in the late 80s, early 90s.
Wow.
In New Zealand, when Starter first came out here, when we first got the NBA really a lot and all that. And I remember thinking then, well, this could change those exact perceptions, because these kids who, you know, are going to have posters of Michael Jordan on their wall or Charles Barkley on their wall are going to have Black heroes. Right. And so that's going to change that. But it's almost like they see a sports hero and not a Black man, because it doesn't seem to translate.
Isn't that crazy?
It is.
And it's almost like people accept their hero for, and I know nothing about sports, so I can't make the point that I really want to make, but it's sort of like, I can with Kobe. It's sort of like Kobe Bryant existed the day he graduated from Villanova. Was it Villanova where he went to school?
I'm going to take you up on that. I'm going to say yes, because I have no idea.
Okay, wherever he went to college, and forgive me, I'm not a sports person, but people don't look at the fact that he lived for 18 years before he played basketball, right? Or maybe he came right out of high school, like maybe he came from Lower Merion High School and went right into the NBA. I can't really remember. But my point being that it's sort of like people look at Kobe like he was born at 18 on a basketball court. They don't look at how he grew up or what his struggle was. They don't try to understand who he was or where he came from. And I think we tend to do that with our heroes. We don't really look at who they were before they became popular. Mm-hmm. And we take them as this figment that just sort of lives in our head, and that's who they are, and they always were the person that they are today. And that's not the case.
So does that translate for you? Does that in a way answer the reason why it didn't happen with hip hop?
Well, no, because with hip hop, there's so much in the lyrics that, like Chuck D said, you know, rap is the CNN of the ghetto, right? So there's so much in the lyrics that even if I have a favorite rapper and I didn't learn who he was before he became a famous rapper, the lyrics are telling me the situations. You know, NWA talked about fuck the police. So many rappers in their lyrics talk about, you know, being profiled or cops that have crossed a line. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm surprised when the world kind of knows certain situations and they choose to put blinders on and not see it. Like, I really thought that the lyrics and the experiences would enlighten people, and it hasn't.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because you're absolutely right. And, you know, again, back in the 80s, right, which, you know, you were kind of like, you know, well, we don't know where this is going, right? We don't know how it's going to be. Now that it is the cornerstone musical genre, you know, of pop music, quite frankly, you would think, well, given the audience base, that people would be sensitive to the lyrics because it's all over it, you know, and you know, it's funny though. You mentioned something earlier too, Wendy, that you thought that people would become better educated because they had more access, right?
Yes.
And people don't read, period. And I say that in a general sense. That
breaks my heart.
But people just don't read. And there's such a large amount of information out there that even in the political climate and all the other things, no matter what your convictions are, none of it really matters to me that way. As long as you're convicted, none of it matters what side you're on. But
just pick a side.
Yeah, but just go do your research. Go spend a moment in time and understand what you're standing up for.
Right.
I'm cool with you going and protesting as long as you know what you're protesting,
Right.
right? But just don't go to be angry. You can stay home and be angry and throw things at the TV and not affect anybody. But if you really believe in the cause, go out and be committed like you have in your career. You can talk about wanting to support independent music. You can talk about supporting independent rappers, but you have dedicated your life to it. That's different. That's different.
Yes. But in fairness, I also started listening to rap in 1980, right? I was 18 at the time. So I came into this as a fan. And when I started Rap Coalition in 1992, I did it because I felt a need to give back to the music that brought me so much happiness and so much passion. So I think maybe I came into this with the right mindset to be an advocate and to really help people.
Well, but
that was always my plan.
Riccardo and I talk about this a lot, right? And this is the whole backbone for this podcast. What is your passion? And if you're doing your passion, then that's not work anymore. And you don't have to worry about money, and you don't have to worry about clothes, and you don't have to worry about whatever your vision of success is, because people see success differently. You know, we were talking before you came on. I know you overheard a little bit of it. It's like, hey, you get in the corner office and everybody thinks, you mentioned it, everybody thinks you were born with a silver spoon and you just showed up there and you've always been there. And so, you know, I can't believe he's telling me to do this because he's sitting over there in the corner office or whatever it is, or she, or whoever it is. And at the end of the day, I used to sit down sometimes and go, guys, I earned this. I had to make a lot of sacrifices to get here. I'm sorry if you're angry that I'm here, but we're going to do it like this.
Exactly. You know, I remember watching you come up, and I remember you commuting across the country to your family. You want to talk about somebody that gave something up for their career? I watched you like give up your home life in order to run a company. And to me, that's the biggest sacrifice anybody could make. I gave up getting married and having kids for my career. I don't mind that.
No, you should. That's a big deal.
I don't mind that. Like,
I would like there to have been some more windy days out there.
It was a choice I made though, right? So I don't regret it, but I also don't want people to take that lightly. Like, oh, well, yeah, you just never had kids. No, I chose not to have kids because I knew that they would take precedent over Rap Coalition, and I didn't want that to happen. So it was an active choice on my part.
But we make those decisions, right? As we make the journey.
Yes.
If you're a thinking individual, and everyone has the ability to be a thinking individual, that's not exclusive, right? You get to choose whether you want to be a thinking individual or not.
Or a boob.
But be that as it may, you know, those are choices, and that's good mentorship too for people watching, right? You got to make a choice. You got to make sure you know what's important. You got to weigh the consequences, because anything that you do, no matter what it is, it's going to require time.
Yes.
And you don't get that back. I don't care where.
It's your most valuable asset and your most valuable resource. It's more valuable than money. It's more valuable than anything.
There's a guy I watched that's a Riccardo, that's a big, he's turned into a very successful influencer, quite frankly, for lack of a better term. It's an overused term. I hate the term, but I'm going to use it here. By the name of Jay Shetty. Have you ever seen any of his stuff?
Who's Jay Shetty?
He was a Buddhist monk, and he went on now to be a influencer. And one of the best things that I ever saw him do was he would do video clips, and they were really well produced and really well done. He's done phenomenally well. I actually talked to him early on a little bit in social media back and forth because I was so impressed. I was like, how can I get involved, right? Because I saw this as a real jewel, and he's went on to do great things despite not working with me, which I can't imagine. I can't imagine that could happen.
Me either. I don't know what he was thinking.
But seriously, he had a whole thing about time, and I encourage you and everybody else that's watching to go look up Jay Shetty and his comments about time, because he actually goes through the numbers, right? And says, this is how much time you spend doing all these things, but you'll never get it back. So make sure you're using that amount of time every day to do something that makes a difference, right? Which, Wendy, you've done.
I have, and I'm proud of it.
So Wendy, so Rap Coalition in a way is your baby, if you like, given that
it really is, yeah.
You gave that up for Rap Coalition.
Yes.
Of all the people that have come through Rap Coalition that you've helped, who of them would you trust to choose your rest home?
To choose my rest home for me?
Yeah, for you, given that they're effectively you know.
I'm going to come and help you, Wendy, when the time comes.
Yes, thank you.
We may be in the same one.
You know, we're going to have to, because nobody else will listen to my stupid stories.
or mine. So
right. Maybe Slick Rick. I might let Rick choose my nursing home, because I think he would choose wisely for me. It's very difficult to give anyone that I've worked with that kind of power, because a lot of artists can be a little bit narcissistic. So I don't know that I would trust their judgment for me. There have been many that have been kind to me over the years, but I don't even think that there's one that I would depend on for my retirement.
Now, you mentioned Slick Rick. I know he narrated the audio version of your book, How to Get a Record Deal, that you wrote.
He sure did.
How was that related to, Rap Coalition? How did that come about out of Rap Coalition?
One of the things that I do for advocacy is educate artists on the pitfalls of the industry, how the industry works, how to make money with their music. And I wrote a book about how to get a record deal, which when you read it is kind of ironic, because it's really more about how not to get a record deal and stay independent. But it's the number one question that everybody asks me. So I felt obligated to write about it. And I wrote the very first version of it in 2011, and then I updated it in 2016. And when I updated it, Rick noticed that I had updated it, and he secretly went off and read it, which is really kind of a cool thing when your friends like even acknowledge the fact that you've done something, right? Yeah. And he liked it so much that he called me one day and he said, "Are you going to do an audio version of your book?" And of course, my first thought was very defensive, like, I don't have time to do that, because I thought he was suggesting that maybe I should do that. And in my mind, I really do know that nobody reads. And my goal was always to make like a video series, because that's the way my market consumes information. And they'd have to be short, like 30-second long chapters, because again, my market. And he said to me, "I would like to do the audio version." And I was like, wait, what? Because in my career, very few, if not nobody, I'll just say very few because it sounds kinder, very few people have offered to really do something that was helpful. And I was so touched and humbled by that. And he actually went and did it. He rented studio time. He went into the studio. He had his DJ engineer it, DJ Chaos. It was very difficult for Rick to do it because it wasn't a natural thing for him to do. He's a rapper, and he's not somebody that was comfortable reading a book. After he did it, there was a glitch on his hard drive, and he lost the entire thing. So he had to go back in a second time and do it over. And you can almost hear it in certain parts of the audio version. You can hear his discomfort, and it makes me love him even more because I know how hard it was for him to do it. Not only the first time, but like twice in a row. And then he handed it to me and I said, "Great, I'm going to split all the income from the audio version with you." And he's like, "No, you're not. I don't want a penny for it." And I'm like, "Well, at least let me pay for the studio time both times. Let me buy you a new hard drive. And then let me teach you about the cloud. But more importantly, let me buy you a new hard drive." And he would not hear of it. And it became like an argument between us. And then I realized, shut up, Wendy, just say thank you, because it's so kind and so generous. And it was just humbling for me that he did that.
Yeah.
You know, what's really interesting, what you said, is that you know, were so shocked that somebody was kind and generous to you after you've been kind and generous to so many for so long. So don't be shocked. You deserve it.
Thank you. Thank you. We're an industry that doesn't necessarily give back. And we're also an industry where others, and you kind of touched on this about the corner office, where others look at you and say, oh, I could do that. I should be doing that. And it's very hard sometimes to accept kindness because we're surrounded by so many people that aren't kind.
Yeah,
So
and you also
kind is like shocking.
right, and you also wonder, okay, I accepted this kindness. What do I owe them? Right? Like, okay,
When are they going to call me back for that favor?
right. Do I have a balance now that I have to work
Right.
out 5 years from now when I'm in the middle of the night at 3:00 in the morning, my phone rings. It's like, hey, remember, it's like, and you're trying to like figure out when you did this thing.
Right.
Like, oh, I got to pay that back now. It's 3:00 in the morning.
And I'm tired.
But can I get up at 6 and pay you back?
Right.
Hey, Wendy, you talked about at the beginning of this chat about how you know, things that surprised you with the internet, and one of those being hip hop and, you know, sort of getting rid of racism and things. Obviously, what's happened of late in the United States with the Black Lives Matter movement, we've seen that reach around the world. So, you know, Europe and the UK and down here in New Zealand and Australia as well. It's reached, and I don't want to make light of it, but do you see this? Nice. Do you see this having an impact that we're going to see over the next 2 years? Because we often find out of moments like this that great artistry gets bred, great things get written, great things get created. Are you waiting for that wave now?
I am. And it's funny because I really see it starting already. I've seen so many underground songs come out. And of course, I can't remember the names of anything because I'm terrible with names. That's also a sign of old age. But there's so many songs already that have come out, especially from young artists. There's a 12-year-old gospel singer, a 12-year-old young African-American guy who was singing about his experiences, and it was so positive. And like when he got done singing this song, and I saw it on YouTube, I had tears in my eyes, and I was so touched by this young 12-year-old and his ability to process the information and find good in it. And I thought, man, I want to be more like this kid, you know, because I'm a little bit jaded, and, you know, I've had the disadvantage of years of seeing this and nothing get better and nothing come from it. And here's this kid that's just so full of hope, and he put out a clothing line to match his song, and it's just, and he's inspired so many other artists, you know, not just African American artists, but Latino and white and Asian. Like he's really inspired these artists to like come forth and become creative on top of his creation, not to mention all of the other songs that have nothing to do with him that are coming out. And I'm seeing it already. And I know that it's just going to get better and stronger and bigger, you know? And for me, in the past, I've been very jaded because I haven't seen change. Like even from Rodney King, which is, I think, 1992 to now, it's like, you know, how have we progressed so little in all that time? And I'm actually seeing change this time. I'm seeing more people that look like me stepping up and saying, enough. I'm seeing corporations, you know, fucking AT&T sent me a text that said Black Lives Matter. I was like, what? You know, I put on my television and Amazon, the screen popped up and it said Black Lives Matters. And I don't think it was necessarily a sales pitch. I think that it's corporate America's way of saying, okay, enough. And we're now rolling with this side because racism's dead, and we want to be ahead of that. We don't want to be on the you know, tail end of that. we want to ride that wave. And I really do appreciate that.
Yeah, and I hope that it's authentic. I do, because my fear always is in corporations in general, having some experience there, that there's an ulterior motive that serves them properly, not necessarily cause. So as long as it's authentic, I'm all about it. I don't like lack of authenticity, but I do have faith, and I believe that.
Rose-colored.
Yeah. And I believe in the greater good, and I believe we're going to get there. And I believe we've come a long way. I think sometimes we don't give ourselves credit for how far we have come. I always tell a story. When I was my youngest was, I think he was 6 years old, and we had a pretty racially integrated household set of friends, as you might imagine. So, for his whole life, he'd been exposed to all kinds of people from all kinds of walks in life, wealthy and poor and common and, sophisticated and black and brown and all this. And, because I've been blessed enough to have that in my, in my sphere of people that I associate with. So to cut to the chase, came home one night, and I can't remember what the kid's name was, but it was an ethnic name. And he said, Dad, I got, Jamal coming over, whatever it was. Right. And I said, well, is he black or white? And he looked at me and he said, what does it matter? And I went, you know what? I went, okay, check. Need to now look at myself and make sure my words are positioned properly so that I don't improperly influence my children to think something that I would never think, but they might not know I never think that, right? They're 7 years old. You know what I mean? So it was funny though. He looked at me and he said, what does it matter? And I went, oh,
how old are your kids now?
Huh?
How old are your kids now?
21.
I remember when they were born.
I know, right? Isn't that crazy?
That's beautiful.
It is beautiful. And I will go on to tell you, I'll leave it with this, Wendy. Everybody says this, but they're good kids. They're solid kids. They're very different kids, but they're good kids. So Nick and Matt, I love you. I still think you're good kids. And, you just keep rocking.
I love it.
Nice. I mean, we talked about the authenticity of those things. I mean, there is that little bit of you in the back of your head that goes, somebody at Amazon's done the numbers and goes, all right, well, if we cut the neo-Nazis, we're probably only going to drop 5% of our turnover. But if we upset African Americans, that's 30%, right?
That could be. I thought that with Nike, with Colin Kaepernick, I thought, wow, they really took a risk because you couldn't really read it. Like, was Nike going to lose money by co-signing him after the NFL said we're done with you, or were they going to gain? They ended up gaining. And I wondered, were there bean counters that did the research on that, or did they really take the risk? But regardless, I love the fact that they embraced him when other people were kind of shutting the door on him. So for me at that moment, it didn't matter. Just like, okay, if Amazon makes more money because they put Black Lives Matter on the screen, it still makes me feel better because at least I feel like more people are being reached by that message. And even if somebody really hates it, I want them to analyze, okay, why do I hate that? Why does it bother me so much? Why do I have to say all lives matter as soon as somebody says Black Lives Matter? Like, what's inside of me that's creating that? And even if it sparks discussion, I hope they make the sales.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's fair play now to the NFL, but it's taken them till this has happened for them to say, oh, if anybody wants to sign Colin Kaepernick, it's okay now.
Doesn't dude look foresightful now?
Totally looks foresightful now. So this Black Lives Matter moment that we've had, or longer than a moment, it's been a couple of months, I suppose now. Do you see this as that turning point that you were hoping you would get with hip hop?
Yes. Well, I hope it's the turning point. I can't say because it's not something I can look into. It's something I have to look backwards towards. So I would have to catapult into the future. But yes, I'm hoping that it is. I was kind of hoping that hip hop would make white people more comfortable with black folks. That was really my secret fantasy. And that hasn't come true yet. So will that happen in my lifetime? I don't know. I hope that it does.
Yeah, you know, and I know this is a fact, right? Is prejudice is born out of ignorance, right?
Yes.
And people, you know, are often, I mean, look, fear is a very big motivator. COVID is one of the things that is a great example of that. People won't give up their liberties and their freedoms and all that until they get scared. And you put enough fear in their hearts and they'll go, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to go inside. You know, yeah, I'm
for me.
If I go outside, I'm going to die, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that's a great motivator. And people respond to it. So I'm hoping that, you know, I've preached for a long time and Riccardo and I were talking about this earlier, just be infinitely curious. You can't really know anything about the Black community or the Hispanic community or the Asian community if you don't get out and get in it. And you know what? There's some really cool stuff going on inside of all those little communities and cool traditions and cool things that happen that I want to incorporate in my daily life because it's really cool stuff.
Right.
And being ignorant and sitting on the outside, you miss out on a lot of that. And I think it doesn't serve you very well. And it certainly doesn't serve future generations very well to not take on the really cool traditions and make them part of your life.
Exactly.
You know? It's selfish.
Yeah. No, you go to Spain and discover the siesta. No one does anything from midday till 2. Put that in your life.
Right. I've been working on that, and it doesn't translate very well in the United States, but it's a fantastic pastime.
Absolutely.
2-hour nap. Perfect. I'm on that.
I'm on that train.
I did on that. You're talking about fear and as a thing that actually gets people to do things. I saw a meme speaking on the internet the other day of a bunch of guys in their full camo gear with their AR-15s protesting about the lockdown. And it was like, these are guys who have been telling us for the last 20 years that they're prepared to sit out a nuclear disaster for 15 years in a bunker, but they can't go for a week without a visit to the Cheesecake Factory. All of a sudden, you know, the reality's at home.
For real. And I'd like to point out that the Cheesecake Factory now delivers thanks to Uber Eats.
You know, that reminds me that I haven't been to the Cheesecake Factory in a very long time. I'm probably overdue.
The ribeye steak is banging.
Oh yeah, and that spicy cashew chicken is not bad either.
I know who we're going to have to hit up for our first sponsorship for the show. Cheesecake.
Right, we just gave them
they're already in debt.
Now that they've gotten the free plugs.
Yeah, exactly.
We want to meet with us, Wendy. They'll be looking for us there.
Exactly.
Well, going back to your initial point at the start of this, then, Wendy, about the internet and what you thought we would get out of it versus what we have got out of it.
Yes.
I remember seeing somebody talking about exactly that and saying, you know, if you had said to somebody in 1980, we're going to be able to have in the palm of your hand all the knowledge in the world. And the reality is all we have is people arguing over TV shows and posting videos of their cat. You know, I mean, can you see that changing or how can you see it maybe being used differently that it might change?
That's a good question because right now I see it taking us in a direction where fame matters. Fame has become its own economy, you know? We have a president who's famous, you know? I think that the pendulum always swings from one side to the other. So right now we're sort of at that fame matters type stage. I'm anxious to see it swing back. I hope I'm alive for that. And I say that as somebody that builds fame for people. So I realize how non-self-serving that is. Fame, good. But we've sort of prostituted ourselves for fame. It's almost like kids will do anything to become famous, you know, and you can only light yourself on fire one time, you know, and I wonder sometimes how far are we going to go to become famous? And in that need to always stand out and one up the next person, we keep sliding down the slope of negativity. So it's almost like even news media has changed so much because clickbait is king, that they'll take something positive and spin it to be a little bit negative to try to get more people involved in clicking on their headline to read the story. And the story might be completely different than what the headline is. So all that to say, I see it sort of going into the negative right now, and I'm waiting for it to start swinging back to the positive. To answer your question, I'm hoping it goes more positive. I hope I live to see it. It definitely will, just because, you know, it's always extremes with human beings. But I just hope I'm alive to see it swing back more to the good, to the positive.
Well, the US has done famous presidents before, you know, with Ronald Reagan, of course.
Ronald Reagan.
You know, what's the difference between, without going into policy and things, but what's the difference between the Reagan fame being in the Oval Office versus the Trump fame being in the Oval Office? Is it just technology?
I don't think it's just technology. I think, and I don't want to get too political because I don't want to offend anyone that could be watching. But I think with Reagan, his fame was based on something real. Ooh, this is going to get ugly when I get to Trump. With Reagan, his fame was based on something real. It was earned fame, if you will. He has movies under his belt. And I think the more current fame that we have is more about people who get famous for doing nothing. Paris Hilton, who became famous for being an heir, you know, to a fortune. You know, Kim Kardashian, who got famous for fucking some R&B guy on video. You know, so again, I don't want to offend anybody that might be watching that might not share my politics. But I think with Trump, he's not necessarily a qualified president, and he didn't necessarily acquire his fame for the things that we normally attribute fame towards, like somebody actually accomplishing something and being known for that. You know, basically he's a guy who became famous for becoming bankrupt.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder how much technology plays into it. And we talked a little bit before you came on too about, you know, I don't think we're going to ever have great candidates because the office is just too violent and volatile. And
I love that point when you made it, because I had never thought about it from that point of view. And I happened to be watching when you guys were talking about that. And I was sitting here like, yes, like $400,000, what a pay cut. You know, who did that job?
And for what? To have everybody on the planet hate me, and not only me. It's fine if you hate me. It really hurts me if you hate my family. And
Right.
to make their lives miserable, because I don't think they signed up for any of that.
No, especially like the youngest son. Like, imagine being him. Like,
Right.
his whole life has changed.
Right. I'm going to be president. What? Like, really? That's a dinner conversation? Don't do that.
Yeah. Please don't do that.
You know, I want to have kids one day too.
Right.
Know?
Like, this kid's fucked. He can never choose a life partner. What kind of business can he start? Like,
for generations, by the way, not just one. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that, and I think the other thing too, and I'm a little bit critical. I'm a lot of bit critical. I'll just go all the way there, you know, because I'm so intimate in the media side of things, of the responsibilities, you know, so much information that these media giants are putting in front of the public are just not validated and just simply not truthful. They're propaganda pieces to get clicks and get advertising money and get
right with you.
These are businesses, guys. And I tell, you know, young people all the time, I'm like, okay, you believe that. And because you believe that and you watch your browser, you are going to get fed, right, with cookies and everything else,
Yes.
a bunch of stuff that you relate to because they know you're interested in it and they get paid. They don't care whether or not you get information. They care whether or not they get paid. So if they can make the information interesting enough, they get paid enough. So that's what really bothers me more than anything else on the planet. Maybe because you and I, Wendy and Riccardo, know a little bit about that piece of the world, but I don't like that, because I need to get, that's why my TV is off, right? I need to get a news source that I can depend on without having to go and look so deep into all these issues to find out what the truth is.
Right.
Well, that's in a way, it's the price of, it's the price of capitalism in a way, isn't it? Because if you make, you know, I mean, if you've got vested interests owning your news sources, then your news is not going to be told from a neutral standpoint. There's always an angle.
Right.
You have two really strong voices in this country, right? And I get up and try and listen to a bit of news every morning and try and sift through what may be real. And you have one side that is totally anti the other side, and all that comes through there is skewed to their agenda, right? Of supporting
on
this
both sides. On both
side.
sides.
And I'm sitting there going like, that's why you probably saw, I don't know if you did or you didn't, Wendy, but on social media, I was like, guys, I'm not going to allow you to use my page or my platform for politics, because I don't want to talk about it. I want to know what you did with your cat this afternoon, Riccardo, unfortunately. That's me, right? or where you went on your motorcycle ride, or where you went shooting at last week, Wendy. That's the stuff I want to know with my, you know, and we can talk about all these deep, crazy issues in person so we can argue.
Right. Right.
You know, we can actually see your facial expression when you disagree and say, okay, you know what? Why do you disagree? Where are you getting your info from? So,
and I want to learn from people that don't agree with me. Like, I don't want to be around all people who think like me. How boring would that be? I want to have lively discussions, but I want those discussions to be based in fact, not based in stuff that I have to pull out my iPhone and Google to see if it's true. I don't want to fact check what you say to me.
Yeah.
You know?
right. Opinions, right?
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, and that's a great point too, because you know there are so many people that they don't listen and take on board what you're telling them. They, you know, it's like there's two halves of a conversation. It's listening and it's talking, but for a lot of people now it's talking and it's waiting to talk. They're not actually taking anything in.
That's a really great point.
It is, and you know what you're touching on, Riccardo, is people tend to shut down whenever they hear something, the slightest bit of thing that either aggravates them or doesn't line up with their point of view. They just shut down. Okay, well, you know, anything else you said past that point is wrong.
It's thrown out the window. Right.
Maybe it's not. You know, maybe there's some stuff in there that has, you know, it needs to be considered. How about that?
Absolutely. And maybe you know something that I don't, and I want to learn that.
Mm.
And even if I don't agree with you, I want to understand your point of view so that I can understand you better.
Hey, but you know what? Before we run out of time, and I'd love to do this all night with you, Wendy, because I love you very dearly.
I love you too.
And I want to know what you're working on. I want to know what's next for Wendy Day.
I have cool shit.
Okay, well, tell me about it. I'll shut up.
Okay, cool. Let me change my background.
Whoa! All right, now you got my attention. Let me scoot up here.
So there's two things I have coming that I'm really excited. I have a lot of stuff that I'm excited about, but I have two things coming that I'm super excited about. One is I am building an incubator or an accelerator, if you will, for rappers to teach them how to make money with their music. So as long as they have a little bit of a budget, they don't have to have a lot. They can come to Artist Centric, and we will help teach them how to put out their music and make money with their music. And we will also invest in them. And they will stay in this incubator system for 2 to 3 years. And then once they leave, they're going to leave with 100% ownership. So we take no ownership. While they're in the incubator, we'll take part of the income as we teach them how to do this. But once they leave, 100% of their publishing, they take it with them. 100% of their masters, they take it with them. And the know-how to run their own companies. So the goal is to build more independent, successful artists, like a Chance the Rapper type independent, successful artist. And then the second thing that I'm doing,
how do they get to there, to get to you, to be a part of that, or be considered to be a part of that?
They would need to catch my attention. Certainly they can email and introduce themselves, but that's not really the way to do it. The way to do it is really to just be successful, or on the road to being successful in their own little city, in their own little area, because we want to help the people that have the best chance of succeeding. And somebody that's already doing it for themselves and showing that they've got the energy and the drive and ambition is going to be more motivating for us to step in and help them get the rest of the way than to have to pick somebody up and drag them across the finish line.
Yeah,
I've done that. It's not fun.
And I'll add this comment before you go into your next one too, is how many times have you heard, because I know I've heard it more than once, is like, if I just get my song on radio, all is right with the world, right? If just get my record played. And the next question I always ask them is, well, what do you got going on in your city? Do people know?
Does anybody know who you are?
Do people pay to come see you play? Are they willing to buy a
What
ticket?
a concept.
You know,
would they buy a t-shirt with your name on it?
Right. Do they know who you are?
Exactly. And then the second thing that I'm working on that I'm excited, and I've been working on this for a couple of years now. I'm building a educational website that will help educate artists who want to learn how to do this and don't have a budget yet, how to put out their music and make money with it. And it'll also be helpful to artists that want to get a record deal. It'll educate them on what's fair and acceptable in the music industry and how they can move forward to get a record deal, because not everybody's meant to be an entrepreneur. Not everybody can be independent. It's a lot of work. It's not, there's some people that just want to be an artist and just make music. And I don't want to leave them out either. I want them to be able to have success as well. So between the educating people how to do it and then the hands-on showing people how to do it, I think we've got it covered. And I'm pretty excited about it.
When are you launching that, and what's it called?
The website, I don't know the name of it yet. We're in the process of naming it. I've been filming for it for 2 years now. I have a YouTube channel where I've put up 100 different topics, no exaggeration. I think it's 102 different topics. And I'm watching the views on that to see, okay, what do people want to tune into, and then what do they avoid? For example, my most popular videos are about touring. My least popular ones, surprise, surprise, are about paying your taxes. So what I've learned from that is that when I have a video about touring, that seems the appropriate time to educate people on paying their taxes, because as you tour in different states, you actually have to pay state tax to whatever state, wherever you do the show. So we can work in the topic of tax, which is a topic nobody wants to hear about, into a topic that's the most popular. So it enabled me to be able to figure out, okay, I got to be able to get this knowledge to people even when they don't want to hear it. So how am I going to do that? And that enabled me to see exactly what people wanted and what they didn't want.
That sounds fantastic, man. That sounds like a great tool.
I'm excited. So if you think of any names for it, like I really wanted to call it Level Up. Originally, when I conceived this 10 years ago, it was called Slaves No More. But in today's climate, as a white person, I just wasn't comfortable calling the company Slaves No More. It's just not that kind of environment anymore. So I'm thinking maybe Level Up or something with the word essential. So if you guys come up with anything, please let me know.
I was just thinking wrap it up.
Wrap it up?
Without the W, obviously.
It's for more than rap, though. I want to do all music.
Right.
Music it up?
Music doesn't quite work, does it? Tune it up. There we go.
Well, Wendy, again, I'm happy you joined us. Thank you.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for even thinking of me to do this. I love that you guys are doing this. I know it's passion for you. You don't get paid to do this. And I love that you're doing it. You're consistent with it. Your show is amazing. It's interesting. I love you guys for doing this.
And thank you. Will you come back and see us though? Will you come back and?
What are you doing tomorrow?
Perfect. That's perfect.
I would love to. Anytime. I'm yours whenever you need me.
And appreciate that. And let us know how we, off of this a show and otherwise, how we might be able to help you in any meaningful way.
I would love that. Ron, what state are you living in these days? Are you in California, New York, New Jersey?
You know what? I'm still out on the East Coast mainly.
Okay.
And I still have a base in Los Angeles. I haven't been back there since the COVID thing because,
Because of the COVID thing.
Yeah, they don't like you to fly around these days.
Yeah.
So I've been on the ground more now than I have been in
years, right?
30 years.
Yeah. Same here. Like
I don't know if I'll ever get on another plane. Maybe.
I have. I flew this weekend to New Jersey, and I flew Memorial Day to Philly. And it was an experience. Although I got to tell you, I felt safer in the air because of my mask. It was clean. They had fogged the plane. I didn't have anybody sitting on either side of me.
Right.
Oh, perfect. Bring that
I
on.
thought it was fine to fly.
Yeah.
Right. Time to come over, Riccardo, and we'll do this show in the house next week.
Sounds good.
There
Sounds
you
good,
go.
man. Yeah. We're in the situation in New Zealand that if I leave and come back, then I've got to self-isolate for 2 weeks before I'm allowed out.
For 14 days,
Come
yeah.
back. Just hang out.
You just don't come back. That's perfect.
Yeah, bring the family and hang out with me. Don't go back.
All right, sweet. Sounds good. Sounds good. I'll dust off the passport.
Come on. Thank you, guys. I appreciate
Thanks, Wendy.
you so much.
Thank you. It's been great chatting to you.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.